Hello there and welcome to Evolution Sim Racing Season 2 of 2024. It is a brand new season. We are ready for round 1. Firstly, an apology from me. Apologies that highlights / live streams disappeared towards the end of the last season. As most of you will know, I have had another miracle arrive into my life, and that miracle is rather absorbing of time, especially when you add it on top of the pre-existing miracle. Yes, apologies, we will do much better this season. Now, a slight change in format this season. It's quite time consuming for me to put together the highlights videos, so what we're going to be doing is recording it as if live, and what we will also be doing is streaming it live on Friday night, so that's at least what I'm going to attempt to do. So we will finish races around 10:30 PM BST/GMT, but we'll end that and then we'll go straight into the live stream so we can review immediately. And if I can't do that, I will at some point find the time to just record as I'm doing now, which is on a Sunday afternoon. So let's switch across to what's going on. Also, if you would like to come and join us, we've got reasons down here that I'm sure you've been perusing, so if you are looking at this, want to get involved with the league, come join us. We would love to have you. Right, as you can see then, cars out on track at the moment. This is the tail end of the tail end of something. Oh, I could have stopped the background music then and it would have been perfect, because that was where the song ended. But yes, as you can see, we've got cars out on track. This is the practice session just before qualifying, before round 2, so that gives us a cracking opportunity to take a look at the race info for this one. So as you can see there, Brands Hatch GP, and what I will suggest is if you turn your head 90 degrees to the left, did any of you ever play Worms, or that game where you had like rocket launchers and you were worms and you had like a team of 4 and you try and destroy other teams of 4 worms? Looks like one of those worms if you turn your head 90 degrees to the left, so you're welcome. As we can see there, 45% chance of rain, and as you can see behind, it is wet on track. That is spray coming off the back of the cars, and as you can see in the race information, session has been declared wet. And the session has been declared over, as you can also see. And we will be going into qualifying straight away. So let's take away that race info, and they now start to filter out onto track. Now, one thing I do have to make clear, unfortunately, because we're using replay files, because we're obviously saving the replay so we can then do the highlights afterwards, because of the software that I'm using, a limitation of it is the live event tracker, which means I can then go back and look at replays. Won't then take me back to live if I view replays, and it also starts mucking around with the overlays and gets confused and starts thinking people are leading the race that aren't leading the race. So there will be no live replays. However, what we would look at doing, and I will attempt to do this on this video, is basically look back at the replays at the end of the race, so we can see exactly who's made what mistakes, and then talk about them. And well, there's a mistake live for us. Chris Hull spinning around. This is just the outlap as well, so yeah, he already causing issues for himself. Not ideal tyre prep to spin and then drive across the grass. Oh, that's some more subpar tyre warming there from Jamie Nicholson. He's going to have to reset back to the pits. So I'm not sure. I think when rain, obviously we've only had rain. Very exciting. First ever race for Evolution Sim Racing in rain, or at least official one. But one thing, when rain was first released, I found the spray was one of the least convincing things. That and the way the rain hits the windscreen. But they do seem to have improved the spray. It does take longer to dissipate now. Oh, and there's contact there. What is happening between Axel Edwards and Chris Hull? Oh, Bedford was going in. Oh, I tell you what, he must have been close to Axel Edwards' rear end there. But it has been a tricky outlap for a lot of people. We'll bring up the qualifying timing information across the bottom there. Now, obviously, we are still on the outlap, so all of these green sectors are largely irrelevant at this point, but we will keep an eye on them as we progress through. Oh, who's that? That's Brian Dodd going round. Paul Nicholson going round in sympathy as well. Oh, and there's almost contact again there. And who's that? Who's number 8? I've forgotten who number 8 is. Josh Levy. He's gone round. Why do I think James Hurlow's number? Oh, and that's Axel Edwards going round. It's absolute carnage out there as everyone's trying to get used to the wet conditions. I've left my water in a highly inaccessible place there. Throat is feeling a little bit raspy. I never mention it when doing these highlights or streams, but I have been a touch under the weather. There's Chris Palmer rejoining after some drama from him. And looking across the time across the bottom there, and Jeff Sharp goes purple in the middle sector, is that? I'm not sure how this is being divided up, because to me there were only 3 sectors at Brands Hatch, but clearly going off of mini sectors at the moment. Jeff Sharp had gone purple in the 4th sector, but Steve Moore looks like he has taken that. Steve Moore, series newcomer this time around, so welcome Steve, very happy to have you. Jeff Sharp goes purple in the 5th sector, Travis Dorado goes purple in the final sector. We should start getting the timing tower coming up with people's times as they start to finish them. And Jeff Sharp does finish his time, that is a 150.4, not too bad. In these wet conditions, I suspect it's not going to be good enough for pole though at this point. Now the question is, why is the timing tower not being displayed? Oh, and that is Brian Dodd into the barriers. That's not ideal. That's Axel Edwards in strife again. Not been a smooth qualifying session for him so far. And you can see there we are already almost halfway through in the top left hand corner. Qualifying timer up there. Just 10 minutes open qualifying, obviously, as you can see. Everybody keeps on hitting each other. Oh, and who's that going around? Oh, that is Chris Hulse struggling with that 3rd corner on this track. Oh, sounds like somebody else is in a bit of strife. It was Chris Palmer. He spins it back round though, but he's got some damage on that right hand side. Not sure if he's made contact with somebody else. Let's bring up the timing tower. I'm not sure why we don't have it. Let's show that. We don't care about the interval, so let's get rid of that. What we care about is people's best times. And so far, Ricky Worrell leads the way with a 150 flat. Dan Slattery with a 150.4, and then Jeff Sharp with a 150.4 as well. They are the top 3 as it stands. Jamie Nicholson comes across the line, but it's only a 2:05. He's been having issues. Jeff Sharp, another a 150.5 there. Had a purple sector in there, but not good enough. There's not too many people going quick. We've got Lord Pendlebury there. He is got 3 personal best sectors, 2 less than best, I suppose, and you can see there that timer is well only a 153.2. That is that sadly butters no parsnips. Dan Slattery lighting up the purple sectors. Had a bad 4th sector. Let's see how he does in the 5th. We are looking at Mr. Slattery at the moment. Oh, and that's Will Thomas goes round. Goes green in the 5th sector, does Dan Slattery, so it all comes down to the last corner for him. Stephen Lacosta goes up to 6th position. Ooh, that is Paul Nicholson recovering. Dan Slattery, how does he do? Well, he does improve, but not by much. And Ricky Worrell improves on his lead there, 149.8. Not bad for him. Steve Everson, look at that. Green sectors everywhere. Travis Dorado, exactly the same. Well, Thomas struggling with his lap times at the moment. Steve Everson, a 151.4. That's his best so far, and that is good enough for 5th place and pole position in the AM category. Watching Jeff Sharp and Jamie Nicholson now. Out of Clark Curve they come, looking for a good exit so they can start the lap well. It is a tricky old start, Paddock Hill Bend, and Jeff Sharp, by 0.4 of a second, puts himself on pole position with just 2 minutes and 15 seconds in this qualifying to go. Now, if you haven't joined us before, as long as you cross the line before that 10 minutes, you will get to complete your lap. So we do still have a fair bit of running to go in this one. It was not just over at the 10-minute mark. Oh, and Sharp, he'd have been looking through... Oh, and that's a shame. Contact there. Nowhere that Jamie Nicholson nowhere that Jamie Nicholson could go, and that is unfortunately only going to afford both of them, really, I think, one more lap. They'll get round to start a final lap, but that's not ideal preparation in qualifying. Top tip there, if you want to have a good qualifying session, do not crash. Dan Slattery goes top of the pile there. He was setting some purple sectors, had a couple of iffy sectors, but it's good enough for a 1.93. That puts him on pole position. The track does appear to be getting quicker and quicker. They're clearing the track of water here. Will Thomas elevates himself up into 5th position there. Who else is going well? Green sectors still being set by a fair amount. Oh my goodness, who was that in the foreground? iRacing director not too fussed about focusing on that accident. But Travis Dorado, he's got 5 out of 6 green sectors. That sets his fastest time of a 151.3. Lord Pendlebury not doing as well as he would hope at the moment. In 7th place at the moment, Ricky Worrell goes on a 149.2, displacing Dan Slattery at the top of the tree. Pendlebury had 4 improved sectors, an iffy 5th sector. How's he going to do in the 6th? Dan Slattery goes purple in a couple of sectors. He's also gone worse than he has done before in a couple of sectors, so it'll be interesting to see what he does. Pendlebury goes 2nd. He's done well, and he also gets across the line to complete a final lap. We are now at the point where if you cross the line now, you are out of qualifying. And, well, that is Jamie Nicholson out of qualifying. Spins. Hasn't managed to get it hooked up. Usually has some good pace, does Jamie Nicholson. But 13th is where he is at the moment, and that is where he will stay. Dan Slattery just coming up to finish his... Oh, but he doesn't. Slowing... Rumour has it, an accident in front of him has ruined that final sector for him. And he will start, unless other people behind can improve, in 3rd place. But some of the big hitters are already out of their cars. Only 0.02 of a second between Worrell and Pendlebury. You feel like it's anybody's. Both are still out on track. Worrell there has set 2 green sectors. Pendlebury has set 2 green sectors. Axel Edwards has a rear wheel falling off. Oh, what's going on here? Bit of a meeting going on there. Here's Brian Dodd. Only 4 people. Well, it's not 4 people left out on track. Brian Dodd spins round. It is 5 people left out on track. There is Lord Pendlebury. Ricky Worrell finishing it. Oh, and Pendlebury... As I am him, I can tell you I was up on my time, but that will not cut it. Oh, and James Hurlow does exactly the same thing on his final lap. Ricky Worrell does improve with a 149.1. And Chris Palmer looks like he is the final person out on track. Oh, but that is him parked up there. So there we go. Qualifying over, a frantic qualifying session, accidents all over the place. In the real world, you can't help but feel nobody would have set a time, just purely down to the fact that it would have just been a red flag every 30 seconds. However, We will now go on into the race session in just a moment, at which point we will take a look at the starting grid. I say we'll go on to we will get there at some point in the near future. Just a reminder that if you do want to come and join us here at Evolution Sim Racing, then please do so. Visit www.evolutionsimracing.com. At least I think that's the address. It is evolutionsimracing.com. Come visit us, or .co.uk if you're really passionate about that. But anyway, let's take a look at the starting grid then. Ricky Worrell, top of the pile, and he gets 4 points for that pole position, so already started his campaign well. Pendlebury, just over 1/10 of a second further back, shares the front row. Dan Slattery and Jeff Sharp sharing the second row. Josh Levy, first of the AM category and 5th overall. Great effort from him. He starts in 5th place with Will Thomas alongside in 6th. James Hurlow, he's in 7th with series newcomer Steve Moore in 8th. Good effort from him on his first outing. Steve Everson is then in 9th and 2nd in class, with Travis Dorado in 10th and 3rd in class. Chris Hulse is then in 11th with Jamie Nicholson in 12th. Chris Hulse is showing as an AM colour there. Red is AM, blue is pro. Chris Hulse, though, is showing because I haven't updated that. We then have Axel Edwards. I forgot where I was there. Axel Edwards, he's in 13th place. Did manage to piece together a lap there despite several woes in that 10 minutes. Chris Palmer was then in 14th. Brian Dodd was in 15th with Paul Nicholson alongside in 16th. And then the final row of the grid, 17th place is Stephen Lacotta and Anthony Marriott in 18th. As you can see behind the cars, it is going to be a rolling start. Just wanted to say, absolutely mega effort from all 18 drivers on the grid for this first round of the season. So well done everybody for turning up. Oh, right then, I need to get a little bit more comfy and need to work out what on earth I am going to do to plug the gap for the next couple of minutes. Didn't want to risk cocking up the overlays by looking at the replays for race 1, and equally that wouldn't work because it doesn't snap back to live because it's not live, it's a replay. Take a look at some cameras. Here's Clark Curve. Here's Graham Hill. It's probably better to watch where they are. Just got to remember where all of the places are. Heading up onto the GP section of the track now. Do enjoy switching to focusing on crashes. Always amusing who it decides to land on. Oh, got a little bit of lag there. Not sure what caused that. Apologies there. Dan Slattery in his only Dan's livery. Awfully competitive if you want to go and check him out. Let us take a look at where people are. I wonder why that's not showing. Maybe if I do that. There we go. Timing tower there. Taking a look at some of those liveries. Oh, and we're coming out of the final corner, so I'm going to stop killing time at this point. Now it's all on Ricky Worrell then to decide when to go. And looks like he is going to go now. Dan Slattery right up behind him there. Into turn one they go. Will they get around there safely? Looks like they are doing so, splashing through the puddles. Ricky Worrell's held on to the lead. Oh, Dan Slattery looking up the inside of Pendlebury for that second place. Oh, they're all squirming about on that exit curve of Graham Hill. Cannot believe this. We are 4 corners in to the first race of the season in wet conditions, and somehow we have had no accidents. See from the timing tower and the intervals, everyone is very close together at the moment. That's why we're focusing on Jeff Sharp, who is probably the loneliest driver out on the grid at the moment. That's Pendlebury and Slattery, and Slattery has got past Pendlebury there. And that is Jeff Sharp. He spins round. It's a tricky corner, that penultimate one, Stirling's Bend. And he's just going to have to sit there and wait for everybody to file past him. Let's take a look at his information in the bottom left-hand corner. Well, no, we can't do that anymore because we've moved on to Paul Nicholson in his wet livery. Oh, looking a bit side by side. Chris Palmer up the inside of Paul Nicholson here. Oh, who's that? That's Dan Slattery. He loses it. Oh, and that is Will Thomas into the back of him. He had nowhere to go. And Will Thomas has got some major damage to that front end. Oh, who's that going around in the background as well? Everybody all over the place. Travis Dorado, that was, somehow doesn't get collected by the rest of the field. Oh, I mean, you can see the rear end of Dan Slattery there, dented from that impact of Will Thomas as they came down Paddock Hill Bend. Or Paddock Hill, I suppose. It wasn't really the bend that was the issue. And that has spread the field out a bit. Ricky Worrell has already opened up a 2-second lead. We're only on lap 2, but he's over 2 seconds ahead of Pendlebury in second place. Dan Slattery, after that issue, now about 3 seconds off the back of Pendlebury. Now let's go and have a look and see what Steve Moore is doing, because he is right up behind Chris Hulse. Oh, and that is somebody running wide, or not running wide. That is someone I suspect had a half spin there, Mr. Hurlow, as he drops down the order. Which reminds me, let's take a look at the big winners and losers. And looking at that, well, we can see the biggest loser out on track at the moment is Jeff Sharp, not for the first time. Yeah, Mr. Sharp has lost 11 positions after that spin, had to let the field go through. That's gone down to 10 as Will Thomas goes into the pit lane, undoubtedly for repairs on that front end after that contact with Dan Slattery. Travis Dorado's lost 6 positions. That becomes 5 as he gets past Will Thomas as well, whilst Will's in the pits. Biggest winner, though, at the moment is Chris Hulse, 5th place. He has gone up 6 positions from 11th. Great effort from him. We've also got Paul Nicholson up 5 places, Anthony Marriott up 5 places, and Jamie Nicholson up 4. So it has been all move in these early stages. Oh, Steve Moore getting a little bit twitchy out of corner number 4 there. Ah, and that's Brian Dodd. He has had a spin. Oh, and that's Will Thomas also running out wide. Surtees causing some issues. It is a tricky one, getting the right braking point on the wet line, and then uphill. Easy to lose traction on that rear end or just slither out wide. And Marriott looked like he has made a move on Paul Nicholson. It's looking awfully close down there, actually, between Marriott, Sharp and Nicholson. Sharp to the outside, forcing Nicholson to go defensive, and Nicholson forced onto that dry line where the grip is minimal, and Sharp steams around the outside. Already back up to 12th place, Jeff Sharp, and he will be looking at making a move on Mr. Marriott very soon. I tell you what, he's got a cracking run out of Clark Curve there, and he's going to actually get alongside as they go down the main straight. It's up to Paddock Hill Bend. Gets on the brakes. Got to be very gentle on the throttle down here. It can easily swap on you in these conditions, but does it well, and 2 positions gained in the 3 corners for Mr. Sharp. And all of a sudden, he is no longer the biggest loser. Will Thomas is. He is down 10 positions. Started in 6th, in 16th now for Mr. Will Thomas. Now, who else is close on track? Well, there seems to be a bit of a 3-way battle for 5th place at the moment. That is between Chris Hulse, Steve Moore and Steve Everson. You can really see on the track map there, they have certainly spread out over this opening 4 or 5 laps. We'll be coming up to start lap 5 in just a few seconds' time as Ricky Worrell rounds the final corner. Looks like Anthony Marriott has... Wow, that is quite the damaged front end. I suspect some contact with a barrier there. And Dan Slattery, I tell you what, a 148.2, that is that time around 9/10 of a second faster than Lord Pendlebury ahead of him, and at the moment he is only 1.4 seconds off the back of Pendlebury. Despite carrying a fair old amount of damage, we saw live the whack on the rear end that he got from Will Thomas. Squirming about on that curb. It does seem to be the faster line, but it is squeaky bum time. Oh, that is definitely squeaky bum time. I'll tell you what, he might have followed through a bit there. Because at Surtees, Dan Slattery goes round, collects a couple of cones on his way back onto the track. But that drops him down to 4th place. But more importantly, he is now a fair way off the back of Pendlebury and Worrell. Worrell is actually really scampering away in these conditions. 4.9 seconds ahead of Pendlebury and climbing. Jamie Nicholson, he is looking to recover after that poor qualifying, and he is closing in on Steve Moore at the moment. This is the battle for 9th place. Steve Moore has been in a little bit of strife. I can see on the event tracker he has had a crash, which is why he has dropped back down to 9th place. Jamie Nicholson all over the back of him. Jeff Sharp, the recovering Jeff Sharp, is also all over the back of him. So a nice little 3-way battle we've got going on here. Stephen DaCosta has sadly retired from this one. You can see there on the timing tower he is out of the vehicle. Anthony Marriott has been off track again and hasn't come into a... Oh, and that is Chris Palmer gone round. It looks like James Hurlow has just got past Steve Everson as well. Let me get rid of the gain graphic from the timing tower. We don't really need that on permanently. Oh, was there a little bit of contact on the rear end there? I think there might have been between Moore and Nicholson, and that allows Jeff Sharp to just sweep around the outside. Very opportunistic from Jeff Sharp there. Nicholson takes a much wider line than Jeff Sharp, though. Looking to stick on the back of him. Will perhaps be looking to sneak past. Oh, that is Axel Edwards. Holds his brakes to make sure he doesn't roll onto the racing line. But that drops Axel Edwards down to 11th. It was a good start for Axel Edwards. Made a shrewd move to box very early to switch. No, hang on. I'm getting confused. Am I getting confused? I don't know. Either way, he was doing well. Less well now after that spin. And Sharp goes up the inside of Moore, as does Jamie Nicholson. And unfortunately for Steve Moore, he has been dropped from 8th place to 10th place. Net loss of 1 position after gaining that position from Axel Edwards. But 2 positions, or 2 cars passed him in quick succession. Looks like Will Thomas is closing in on Travis Dorado. He is indeed all over the back of him, like a cheap suit. Dorado goes defensive, braving that inside line where it is slippy. But the rain no longer seems to be falling, so the track will be starting to dry up. We are almost at half distance. I doubt we'll get to the stage where pitting for dry tyres is the option. It is roughly a 36 second pit stop if you want to change your tyres, so it's only really worthwhile doing if it's early in the race for you to make that time back up. Oh, and around Travis goes, manages to keep it out the barriers, but he's now no longer part of that battle with Will Thomas. Will Thomas is now closing in on Paul Nicholson. Closest battle on track at the moment, these two. Takes a look at that inside line, decides against it. Looks like he's got a little bit more momentum than Paul Nicholson going up the hill. Axel Edwards is there. Oh, and they go either side of him. Schumacher and Hakkinen-esque from Spa. Don't ask me to tell the year because I cannot remember. Axel Edwards looking to come back at Paul Nicholson there. Couldn't quite do it. Not a fantastic spot to get your overtaking done there at Westfield. And he does fall off the back a little bit. Dan Slattery, 147.9. That is the fastest lap of the race so far. So if he hadn't made the couple of mistakes that he has done, you do feel he would be contending for, well, at least second place with Pendlebury, arguably first place with Ricky Worrell as well. That gap between Worrell and Pendlebury has stuck at around the 4.5-5 second mark over the last few laps. Oh, sorry for the occasional snurching. Oh, who's that going around? That's Steve Everson. He doesn't cause any damage other than to that cone that he's now shepherding onto the track. Oh, Steve Moore gets past him. Already putting in his bid for the title of Steve Prime as he sweeps past Steve Everson there. Axel Edwards and Paul Nicholson having a good old battle here. Edwards looks to the inside, managing to find some grip on that inside line. Could be getting to that point where the normal dry line is starting to become a little bit more favourable. Not that you guys can see it, but there's a couple of cats being twats in the room which caught my attention. Dan Slattery sets another fastest lap of the race. He is not mucking about and is closing that gap to Josh Levy in third place. Cracking job from Josh Levy. Third overall, leading the AM category. Chris Hulse is then second in... No, Chris Hulse isn't second in AM because Chris Hulse is now in the Pro category. So it's Steve Everson in second in the category. Oh. Max Edwards looking to the inside as they come to Paddock Hill. Ooh, it's going to be tight. Manages to hold it on that inside line. Well done. But is he going to slither out wide? There is contact between the two of them, but only light. Paul Nicholson should have the momentum because the wet line is still the faster one at the moment. And manages to hold off Edwards for the moment. Just 9 minutes left in this race. It has flown by. Oh, and around he goes. Paul Nicholson into the barriers. That's a shame. And oh, and that is Travis Dorado doing exactly the same thing. Oh, and someone else did it. It's the oil down on the track. I'm not sure. Was that Chris Palmer in the background as well? Yeah, it was. But all three of them there losing the rear end. Chris Palmer manages to gain a position in all of that, as does Brian Dodd as he gets past Travis Dorado there. Now, we haven't really seen him at all in this race. His sponsors, which I assume are Chris Palmer, as that's his house on his car. Haven't really seen him much in this race. But Ricky Worrell is leading the way, but that gap was just over 5 seconds at its best, but it is now 3.5 seconds. Pendlebury has started closing down on him. Could be a little bit too late in the day at this point, as we've got under 8 minutes of this one to go. Looks like Paul Nicholson has jumped to the pits. We've also had a retirement from Anthony Marriott, unfortunately. But we'll keep an eye on that gap at the front. There's Brian. Oh, Brian Dodds throws it in deep and through the gravel he goes. Keeps it out of the barriers, which is the main thing. Just went a little bit too deep at Paddock Hill Bend. And interesting stuff. You can see there in the top left, Pendlebury, a 1:47.1. That was 0.4 of a second faster than Worrell on that last lap. Dan Slattery has made it past Josh Levy by quite a margin, 9.2 seconds. I'm not sure if we've missed Josh Levy having a moment. But Slattery is back up onto the podium as it stands. There is James Hurlow. Jeff Sharp just 2.2 seconds behind him and is closing that gap as well. Sharp, good recovery drive considering he did fall all the way back down to 18th place, or last, as it is also known. And Chris Palmer going through Clark Curve. That is Travis Dorado in hot pursuit, as well as Brian Dodd. There's Dan Slattery on a mission. Will surely be on a mission for fastest lap. Dan Slattery loves a good fastest lap. Will have to be seriously going some, and to be honest, upgrading his car if he's going to catch up with Pendlebury and Worrell at this point. That battle between Pendlebury and Worrell now down to 2.9 seconds. This, however, is Chris Hulse and Steve Moore. They're battling over 8th place. No, they're not. They're battling over 7th place. I can't read. The sun has come out, so that's going to aid things. The drying of the track. Still a lot of spray being kicked up. And you can see that dry line starting to emerge on track. Side by side they go as they go down the Brabham Straight. Brake lights come on. Moore on the inside. Gets the car turned in nicely, and that is 7th position. Good showing this in his first race ever in Evolution Sim Racing. So, as it stands, no particularly close battles on track. This is the closest, I think, at 1.1 seconds. James Hurlo just 1.1 seconds off the back of Josh Levy, and in turn, Jeff Sharp has shaved 7/10 of a second off his gap to James Hurlo since we last checked in on it. Pendlebury continuing to close down on Ricky Worrell in the battle for first place. Now it's down to 2.3 seconds. There is Lord Pendlebury. And there is Ricky Worrell in the foreground. We will keep an eye on that one. Ooh, looks like Brian Dodd is closing in on Chris Palmer. Oh, onto the grass, both of them just dipping that rear right into the grass. Both of them managed to avoid spinning though. So the battle will continue, just 0.3 of a second between them. These two are a couple of laps down, I think, on the lead lap. They have both been in strife. There's James Hurlo. There is Will Thomas, looking to go around the outside of Steve Everson for 9th place. Steve Everson getting himself into trouble. Absolute commitment on that outside line from Will Thomas, and gets all the way around the outside. Very nicely done from him. And Jeff Sharp is closing in on James Hurlo there. Now down to just 0.6 of a second. Oh, and Hurlo is out wide. That says Sharp out wide as well. Leaving everything out there. Chris Hulse has not let go of Steve Moore after Steve Moore got past him. And look at that, 147.8 for Worrell, but a 146.9 for Pendlebury, and he is within almost a second of Ricky Worrell here. Oh, that is Chris Hulse. No, it isn't. It's Chris Palmer causing issues for himself. There is Wiki Wobble. I'm not sure. Commentary has been taken over by Jonathan Ross. We are on the last lap, so it looks like it's probably going to be a bit insurmountable for Pendlebury to get past Worrell at this point. Still 1.6 seconds, though Pendlebury has been quicker through Surtees than Worrell has. So let's see how that gap goes. And you can see it's tumbling down now to 1 second. 0.9 of a second. He could be on him by the end of the lap. Meanwhile, let's have a quick look at Jeff Sharp and James Hurlo. Also on their last laps. 0.6 of a second between them. 0.6 of a second between Pendlebury and Worrell. That's Brian Dodd up ahead of them that they will be looking to lap. This could all go wrong for Worrell in the final few turns. Has been more conservative to try and preserve that lead without making any errors, but Pendlebury is all over him now. Just 0.3 of a second in it. Oh, Pendlebury lost the rear end slightly there, and that is probably going to afford Ricky Worrell the gap that he needed. 0.6 of a second going into Clark Curve, and indeed it does. Ricky Worrell just 0.5 of a second ahead of Pendlebury as they come across the line. Excellent racing from those two. Looked like Worrell was going to drive off into the distance at one point, but in those changeable conditions, Pendlebury managed to start coming back at him and equally managed to get the fastest lap of the race. And Dan Slattery comes across the line to wrap up the podium. And they all start coming across the line now. Jamie Nicholson looking like he is closing in on Steve Everson as they come across the line. James Hurley had managed to hold off Jeff Sharp for that 5th place. Looking to go all the way around the outside of Everson here, Jamie Nicholson. Looks like he's got some good momentum. That grip on the outside line still winning out. Towards the line they come. Jamie Nicholson takes it. Very nice move there. Oh, that is Will Thomas absolutely sending it into the barriers, and there is Steve Everson doing the same. Spoiler can't make its mind up whether it wants to leave the vehicle or not. Anyway, let us take a look at those final results. So, Ricky Worrell, as we saw there, taking the win, half a second ahead of Lord Pendlebury. Dan Slattery was then in 3rd place. Josh Levy, he finished 1st in class for the AM category and 4th overall, with James Hurlow in 5th. Jeff Sharp was then in 6th, couldn't quite get past Hurlow in those closing laps. Steve Moore, the debutant, comes home in 7th, a very solid result from him. Chris Hulse is then in 8th and 2nd in class, with Will Thomas in 9th and Jamie Nicholson rounding out the top 10. 3rd in class and 11th overall was Steve Everson, with Axel Edwards in 12th. Travis Dorado in 13th, Brian Dodd in 14th, Chris Palmer in 15th, Paul Nicholson in 16th, Anthony Marriott in 17th, and Stephen Lacosta in 18th, 13 laps down. Now, we have a very, very busy event logger. So let's just start picking out some of the replays. There was the green flag I can see. First big crash was Jeff Sharp. Oh dear, let me get rid of the standings. This was Jeff Sharp. Loses that rear end at Stirling's Bend and then has to wait for everybody to get past him before he can rejoin. He certainly would have been challenging that top 4, top 3 if he'd kept it on track, but sadly for him, he goes off. Dan Slattery went off track. This dropped him down first of some of his woes. Loses that rear end, does well to make sure it doesn't go all the way around. But that was then when Will Thomas clobbered the rear end of him. We'll take a look at that from not Will Thomas's perspective, but we'll take a look at it. Well, that's a terrible camera angle to take a look at it from. That's also a terrible camera. Oh, I've tried to be too clever here, and it's not worked out well for me. Well, let's then take a look at what happened down here to Travis Dorado. Loses the rear end, catches it, but then goes all the way around, and that then takes someone out. I couldn't quite see who it was. And Stephen Lacosta, he got into strife as well. Let's take a look at that one. Oh, well, this is, so Stephen Lacosta, lovely little switchback on Axel Edwards there, and then just had nowhere to go. Clips the spinning Travis Dorado, and too much damage for him to carry on. Into the pits he goes. Let's have a look and see what happened to Chris Palmer here. Turns in and spins around. That was not a cracking camera angle there. Let's change some of this around. There we go. That's a bit better. Anthony Marriott went off track. Did he just clip the grass on the outside there? No, it doesn't look like he did, but he definitely clips the grass on the outside there. Not the most exciting replay we've seen. I am just plucking these at random. Take a look at this pass from Jeff Sharp. Don't say I don't ever show you in a good light, Jeff, because excellent use of the wet line there and passes Will Thomas as he peels into the pit lane. Cracking move there, Jeff Sharp. Don't say I don't give you anything. Brian Dodd, he went off track. Just gets on that little bit of Astro on the outside. Spins him around. And then Brian Dodd again. This is a little bit later on that lap. In fact, on the very next corner, just runs out wide, clips Travis Dorado. He goes round. And unfortunately for him, that dropped him down a few more positions. Jamie Nicholson went off track. Again, that AstroTurf on the right-hand side, causing people issues. You dip those tyres in, and it will bite you. Safely rejoins there, waiting for Axel Edwards to go through in that instance. Had a crash then from Steve Moore. This is coming in to the final corner, and almost a very nice drift. Does well to just about avoid everybody as he came back on track, but that was the reason he dropped down a few positions. Slattery, let's see what he's been up to. Chasing down Pendlebury here. He was chasing down at quite a pace, but absolutely throws it into Surtees. Not fantastic. Chris Palmer, what are you at? Looking down from the chopper. And once again, that corner at Stirling's Bend causing people issues. The graphics of the trees are causing us issues at the moment. Axel Edwards had a crash. Just gets a little bit wide there. Did alright, but just a little bit too much pace. Spins him round at Surtees. A corner that a fair few people have been struggling on. Jamie Nicholson, a little bit later on, he crashed. Paddock Hill Bend. I tell you what, that was a beautifully controlled slide until it wasn't. The mellow yellow machine may have been a little bit brown on the inside after that one. Steve Everson then charging up towards Surtees. Death Corner, we'll start calling it. And round he goes. We saw that one live, actually. I do recall it. Josh Levy. Coming up to Surtees again. Trickiest corner on the track, I think. Round he goes. You can see the skid marks of previous victims. Dan Slattery just about avoids him. Collects a cone for his troubles. Have to really commend the marshals there under no yellow flags at all. Resetting those cones all the time. Chris Palmer. Up to Surtees again. Round he goes. Loses that rear end. Just about avoids that cone. He'd got a few points in drifting for that. And just ahead of him you can see Travis Dorado recovering from strife. Chris Palmer again. Not at Surtees though, so that makes a nice change. Has he clipped the Astro to... He has. He's clipped that Astro on the outside. Round he goes. Dorado moving through and avoiding him. And I think that is pretty much it. We've got this one from Will Thomas. Going up to Druids. Taking so much pace in Will Thomas. And just loses that rear end. Then we have the checkered flag. And we're going to look at Will Thomas for that. Not Ricky Worrell. There is Ricky Worrell taking that checkered flag. Absolutely cracking job from him. So, winner, winner, chicken dinner for Ricky Worrell. First race of the season. Congratulations to him. Well, in a slight change to normal proceedings, then we are actually going to be ending the video right here. But don't fear, the next video will be uploaded as well for round 2 of the new Evolution Sim Racing season. Ugh. God, what a crap summary that was. Anyway, we will see you very, very soon.